Deep Purple is a band born from movement. Not only the movement of sound, but the movement of people. Lineups changed, personalities collided, eras were named and then closed, like layers of geology stacking over time. Mark I, Mark II, Mark III, Mark IV. Each phase carried with it a new voice, a new source of power, and often a new fracture. In the history of rock, that is not an exception. A band that lives long enough reaches a point where success is no longer the greatest challenge. Conflict becomes unavoidable. As fame grows, ego grows with it. When creativity is no longer absolutely free, it begins to collide with control. And those closest to the center are often the first to leave. But through all of that turbulence, there is one thing that almost never changes. Behind the stage lights, behind the guitar riffs cutting through the air, behind the explosive vocals and the arguments that have become legend, there is always a drum beat that never breaks. Steady, patient, as if it does not belong to that same noisy world. That is Ian Paice. He is not the loudest presence, not the face of media representation, not the controversial name, nor the first to be mentioned when the history of Deep Purple is told. But he is the only person who has appeared in every official lineup of the band, from the very beginning to the present day. Deep Purple is famous for power, for speed, for volume, for the feeling of a sonic storm always on the edge of losing control. But if you look closer, if you listen longer, you begin to realize that what keeps that storm from tearing itself apart is not noise. It is the heartbeat behind it. A heartbeat that does not seek to dominate, that does not need to lead, that does not compete for the spotlight. It is simply there, doing its work, keeping everything in motion as personalities come and go, as eras begin and end. And from that, a question slowly emerges, quiet yet persistent. How can one person remain in a famous band, known for division? Why, in a world where large egos rarely coexist for long, is the man seated behind the drum kit the one who never left? Ian Paice was born in 1948 in Nottingham, a quiet industrial city where music was not tied to the ambition of becoming an icon, but to the habit of listening. There, people did not grow up thinking they had to become stars. They grew up with a steady rhythm of life, with sounds that did not need to defeat anyone in order to exist. It was precisely in that environment that Paice formed a very different relationship with the drums. Drums were not a tool to speak louder than others, but a way to keep everything moving together. His earliest influences did not come from rock. Jazz, swing, and blues taught Paice something more important than technique, a sense of time. Jazz taught him to listen to the spaces between the notes. Swing taught him how to keep rhythm from becoming rigid so that music could breathe. Blues taught him that sometimes a single beat placed in exactly the right spot can carry more emotion than an entire chain of complex displays. From a very early age, Paice understood that drums do not exist to occupy space, but to shape it. When rock began to accelerate in the late 1960s, many drummers moved in the opposite direction. Louder, faster, more aggressive. Paice was different. His style was flexible, full of motion, but rarely attention-seeking in a showy way. He did not build his drumming like a wall, but like a ground, solid enough for others to run faster, yet never in their way. In 1968, Paice joined Deep Purple, at a time when the band had not yet become an icon. Deep Purple was still searching for its own shape, experimenting, changing, colliding. In that context, Ian Paice did not bring with him a personality that needed defending, but a rare skill, the ability to adapt without losing identity. From the very beginning, he did not construct the image of a drum hero. There were no long solos to assert his position. No need to step forward to claim the spotlight. Paice chose, or accepted, a role that was less visible but far harder to replace, keeping the machine running smoothly even as other components continued to change. In a world where many musicians play to be heard, Paice played so that others could play better. He did not strike the drums to become the center of the sound. He played so that the sound would not collapse when pressure increased. And that very choice, formed early on before the storms arrived, prepared him for something few recognized at the time: the ability to remain. When the real storms finally began, when people speak about the sound of Deep Purple, memory usually begins with sharp edges. A guitar riff cutting through the air, fierce and defiant, inseparably tied to the name Ritchie Blackmore. A vocal soaring to the very limits of human endurance, carrying drama and tension from Ian Gillan. Then the thick, expansive layers of organ, breathing with classical weight and grandeur, from John Lord. These are the elements that explode, the ones most easily recognized, the ones history tends to remember. But if there were only those sharp edges, Deep Purple would not have survived as long as they did. Their music required not only power, but the ability to regulate itself. And that regulation did not come from the front of the stage, but from behind, where the drums quietly kept everything from slipping off its axis. The role of drums in Deep Purple was not to impose, but to regulate. Ian Paice did not turn rhythm into a rigid wall. He built it like flexible ground, solid enough to bear the weight of hard rock, yet soft enough for the music to bend, change direction, and breathe. Paice's groove carries clear traces of jazz and swing. The beat is never completely straight, always slightly swaying, a sense of continuous motion rather than forced forward momentum. That balance is what made Deep Purple different. While many hard rock bands of the same era relied on raw force and speed, Paice brought into their sound something harder to name: a sense of flow. The music does not jerk or fracture. Transitions from riff to solo, from verse to chorus, from explosion to restraint, and all unfold as if they had been breathing together long before. In moments when the guitar erupts, when Blackmore pulls the entire band forward with almost aggressive speed and energy, Paice holds the ground. His drumming does not chase excitement. It anchors it, ensuring that the energy does not escape control. When John Lord's organ swells, expanding the harmonic space and creating a sense of overwhelming scale, Paice preserves the structure so that grandeur does not turn into chaos. And when Gillan's voice pushes emotion to its highest point, Paice holds the tempo, giving that emotion something solid to return to. Paice does not play drums to impress. He rarely creates moments that make listeners say, "Listen to that drummer." Instead, he creates moments that make listeners feel the band working. The sound of Deep Purple can be fierce, can be complex, but it rarely loses balance because there is always a drummer who understands exactly when to push and when to yield. He does not create the thunder. The lightning is already there, in the guitar, in the voice, in the organ. Paice's role is to ensure that the storm does not tear itself apart. He keeps time for the storm so that it is powerful enough to become legend, yet stable enough to endure through time. The history of Deep Purple is not a straight line. It is a sequence of ruptures. Departures did not occur at the edges of the story. They were the story. Ritchie Blackmore left the band in 1975, and then again in 1993, taking with him an energy that both shaped and shattered every structure it touched. Ian Gillan left, returned, and left again, like his own voice, always balanced on the edge between explosion and silence. John Lord departed in 2002, closing an era of foundations that had supported the band's sound for decades. Lineups shifted constantly, not only because of music, but because of people. In a band where large personalities collided without pause, every departure left behind a void, and often a wound. Yet amid those storms, something strange happened. Ian Paice remained. Not as a victor, not as a survivor being celebrated, simply still there. Paice was never drawn into creative power struggles. He did not need to be the one deciding direction. He did not compete for the spotlight, nor did he stand as a representative of any faction. When debates over control, sound, and the band's future intensified, Paice did not step forward to win or lose. He stepped back, but he did not disappear. That choice did not come from weakness. It came from a very different understanding of role. Paice understood that in a creative system prone to collapse under the weight of ego, the greatest danger is not conflict, but everyone wanting to be its center. He chose not to dominate, not because he could not, but because he did not need to. While larger personalities clashed, Paice held his place through stability, not through a louder voice, not through backstage power, but by being present at the right moments, holding the rhythm in the right places, and allowing the music to keep functioning while everything around it wavered. He became a silent point of reference, something the band could return to, even as other elements changed. And from that, a question began to take shape, not only for Deep Purple, but for any creative collective that lasts long enough to grow weary of itself. Is stay in a form of passivity? Or is it another kind of strength? The strength of someone who does not need to win in order to still be there in the end. In the world of rock, power rarely exists in silence. It is usually tied to image, to voice, to the ability to control the narrative. Whoever stands closer to the spotlight has a louder voice. Whoever appears more often is seen as the center. But Ian Paice never stepped into that game. And it was precisely by standing outside it that his entire journey was shaped. Paice was never the media face of Deep Purple. He did not need interviews to assert his position, nor did he create controversial statements to maintain attention. When he spoke, Paice usually spoke about the band as a collective, never placing himself in front, never constructing a personal story that needed defending. He had no rock star-style mythology, no image to maintain, no role to replay. That made him difficult to attack, because there was no image to drag into a battle. In the studio and on stage, Paice's approach to creative power followed the same logic. He contributed musically, directly shaping the feel of Deep Purple, but never sought to become a creative leader. Paice did not control direction, did not set the rules. He accepted a foundational role, one where influence does not come from commands, but from steady presence. When you keep things running, you do not need to say how important you are. The role speaks for itself. Most importantly, Paice never became the center of drama. In a band famous for conflict, that was a conscious choice. He did not create scandals. He did not turn disagreements into personal narratives. He did not leave to prove a point. When tensions escalated, Paice did not align himself with any faction. He did not build alliances, did not seek advantage. He stayed in his position, keeping the rhythm going, even as others argued over control. That choice required a kind of discipline few talk about. Not technical discipline, but discipline of the ego. Paice understood that in a creative environment, where ego can easily destroy a collective, dominance is not always victory. Sometimes it is the first step toward collapse. Instead of domination, Paice chose non-occupation, not because he was weaker, but because he saw the consequences more clearly. And over time, that choice revealed its true strength. As public faces changed, as successive leaders departed, Paice remained, not as a celebrated victor, but as the one person who no longer needed to prove anything. Sometimes, the one who does not try to lead is the one who stays the longest. Not because they lack ambition, but because they understand that for a collective to survive, someone has to choose not to stand at the center, so that the center does not collapse. In 2016, Ian Paice's body sent a signal that no artist can afford to ignore. A minor stroke, not dramatic, not loud, but enough to interrupt the inertia of decades of continuous motion. Deep Purple was forced to pause touring, not because of internal crisis, not because of conflict, but because of the very real limits of the human body. The way Paice faced that moment almost perfectly reflected who he is. There was no symbolic statement, no brush with death narrative, no need to turn fragility into a heroic chapter. He rested quietly, recovered, and allowed time to do its work. In a rock world accustomed to turning every incident into a message, Paice chose not to tell that story. That silence was not avoidance. It was a form of honesty. Paice did not treat illness as something to be conquered in order to prove personal worth, and he treated it as a reality, something to be respected, handled appropriately, and then moved past when possible. No added meaning, no imposed symbolism. A few months later, he returned to the stage. There was no pause for extended applause, no message of, "I'm back stronger than ever." Paice sat down behind the drum kit, picked up the sticks, and began to play, as if there were nothing that needed emphasis beyond the music itself. At nearly 70 years old, that return carried a very different meaning. Paice did not come back to prove that he was still strong enough, nor did he return to defy time. He returned because it was what he had always done: keep the beat. As long as the beat could continue, he continued. No more, no less. In a world where artists are often expected to tell stories of overcoming adversity, Paice refused that script. He did not turn illness into a new identity. He did not use it to redefine himself. His return carried no sense of victory, but a sense of continuation, like a musical passage that needs no climax to have value. There was no declaration, no staged moment of emphasis, only the drum beat returning to its rightful place. And it is precisely in that seemingly ordinary moment that we recognize the most important truth. Paice never needed to prove who he was. He only needed to continue being himself, the one who keeps the heartbeat of a band from ever stopping. Ian Paice's legacy does not fit easily into familiar molds. He is not a legendary guitarist. Deep Purple has had names large enough for history to remember on its own. He is not a frontman, not positioned where attention and expectation constantly converge. He is also not a classically trained musician crossing into rock, nor a brand strategist adept at building a personal image for the times. Paice stands outside all of those definitions, and precisely because of that, his legacy begins to reveal itself in a different way. For more than 5 decades, Deep Purple has passed through more phases than few bands can compare with. The sound changed, the people changed, ambitions, power, and visions of the future shifted as well. But one thing did not change. Paice was the only person present in every phase of Deep Purple, not as an observer standing apart, but as part of the current itself, continuous, enduring, unbroken. That presence creates a form of legacy that is difficult to measure by conventional standards. It does not reside in extended drum solos that force audiences to leap to their feet. It is not found in moments immortalized by stage lights. Paice's legacy lies in the fact that the sound of Deep Purple never lost its foundation, no matter how many times everything above it changed. He is the uninterrupted heartbeat. As major personalities came and went, as eras closed and reopened, Paice's drumming kept the band from losing itself, not by freezing the sound in place, but by allowing it to evolve without collapsing. That stability is not passive. It is the condition that makes change possible without destruction. In a world that often celebrates strong personalities and loud individuality, Paice becomes living proof of a lesser-spoken truth. Sometimes stability is more powerful than personality. Not because it imposes itself, but because it allows other personalities to coexist without tearing the collective apart. If Deep Purple is a complex musical machine, Paice is not its most eye-catching component, but he is the part without which everything would fall out of time. His legacy does not need to be told through grand narratives. It is present in the simple fact that the band still stands, still recognizes who it is, after more than half a century of constant motion. And perhaps that is the rarest kind of legacy in rock. Not the legacy of the one most remembered, but the legacy of the one who makes all other memories able to continue to exist. The central question of this story, in the end, does not lie in music. It lies in people. How can one person remain in a band famous for division? The answer is not that Ian Paice was stronger than the others, nor is it that he won power struggles. Paice remained because he never entered that race. He did not live to defeat anyone. He did not need to become a separate icon. He did not need to be remembered as the center of the story. He did not compete with large egos that, sooner or later, always have to leave in order to preserve themselves. For more than half a century, Paice did just one thing. He kept the beat. He kept the beat when the guitar exploded. He kept the beat when the voice pushed beyond its limits. He kept the beat when arguments shook the entire band. And he kept the beat even when his own body forced him to pause. When all the storms passed, when members left, when eras were closed like chapters already read, Deep Purple was still there. Not because they had never broken apart, but because their heartbeat had never stopped. Ian Paice is not just the drummer of Deep Purple. He is the only one calm enough to stay when others could not. And sometimes, in a world that constantly celebrates leaders, the one who does not need to lead is the one who lasts the longest. A band of large personalities, a history of conflict and reunion. One man who never left his position. If you love real stories behind musical icons, follow Icons and Legacies to continue exploring the people who keep the sound of a generation from ever stopping.